Thank you, my friends. What a blessing. So, thank you. Thank you for letting me share my friends with you all. The young man ended up on a desert island. When he finally got rescued after 7 years, he's on a boat and they're pulling away, and he and the captain are looking back at the island that he had been on. And when looking back, they saw 3 huts. So he said to the young man, he said, what's the deal with the 3 huts? He said, well, the first hut was my house. The second hut was my church. What was the third hut? He said, that was my new church after I got mad at the old church. I put one story in here. This is from Chicago, not here, but within an hour of here, 30 years ago. A friend of mine used to be here with me, was a teacher at our Natty, the seminary that was here. And he went to speak at this church, but he was in the afternoon, but he went in the morning. He went for Sabbath school, and nobody greeted him. No one gave him a bulletin. No one gave him a seat. Just had to do it by himself. Sabbath school, church. Had to find his own way down to the potluck. And so by 3 o'clock, when he got ready to speak, he was a little frustrated. So we got the seminar started, and he said, you guys have got to become a more friendly church. I've been here all day. No one has greeted me. No one's welcomed me. No one's given me a bulletin, nothing. If you want to grow, you're going to have to get more friendly. Well, now they're hurt, and they came up afterward, and they said, Pastor, we're really a very friendly church. But all the friendly people were gone today. You know that I'm just a bridge here between the past and the future. And how can we have church to be its best? I was with the conference. He's the secretary, now becoming the interim president yesterday for several hours, getting ready to move the committees and all their plans and dreams for our church. I asked a question to my California church last Sabbath. And I said, is it possible for us to move from believing in Jesus to being saved by Jesus to loving Jesus and actually get all the way to acting like Jesus? Is that possible? And I said, somehow we have to do that here. I've been preaching on Romans 16 for a long time. Maybe I even preached it here. I don't remember. Romans 16, if you read it, has been read here a little bit ago. It has all these greetings. Greet Priscilla, great Aquila, great Epaenetus, great Andronicus. He greets these long list of names. Most people never even read Romans 16. They just see this list and move on. 1 Corinthians. These are the people that Paul says, thank you. They came to see me when I was in jail. They brought me food. That was my first baptism. I was shipwrecked with those people. Greet. A lot of us would say it's just a list. But if Paul were here, he would say, don't you dare call that a list. It's people he's done life with for 25 years. Don't call it a list. You go to Vietnam Wall, that's my time. I should have been there. 1973 is my year. I had a low number. I got out of it. 50,000 people there. You just say, these people died. Their families missed them. They're gone. People put their hand on their name. Don't call it a list. The other cemetery is Normandy, or D-Day beaches. We've gone a couple times, and boys went last time, and we read there's a little story, there's a name, there's a date. Left a girlfriend, left a wife, left children behind. There's a story. Even our son, like an hour reading these stories. got off a boat and went up that hill. Machine gun shooting down on them. They don't call it a list. People give their lives for our country. Romans 16. This is my last church in Garden Grove. At farewell, 500 people there. These same people did unbelievable worship music. I called everyone up that I had baptized or married in 10 years. Crowd came up. Wow. Precious to me. We had a dinner the other night. Most of these people I've married or gone on trips with around the world. The group got together. They knew we were coming here. They said, we're going to see you before you go. Romans 16. First Saturday night here. You see yourself, Victor? Bunch of people got together at dinner. Victor's doing the selfie there. 20 people stood around the piano and sang Saturday afternoon vespers for an hour. Dinner together. Precious people. People we've done life with. Now I've added more Romans 16. Do you have a Romans 16? People that you would just, precious to you. Don't call it a list. Paul would say, this is my church. These are the people I've done life with. I'm going to go to heaven with these people. Don't you dare call it a list. Fred Craddock is an old preacher. I've had him right here, spoke right here. Group of pastors one time. And he tells a story in a sermon about his first year as a pastor in the Appalachian Hills. Baptist church, and once a year they would have a baptism down on the river. They would go down to this little sandy area, put up some blankets so they could have some changing rooms, put up a big bonfire, go baptize in the freezing cold creek. People would change, they would wrap blankets around them. Then they would sit around the fire and they would put these new church members right around the fire. And then behind would be the other church members, the long-term church members. One by one they would say, my name is so-and-so. If you're ever sick, you need me to run and go get some medicine for you or come and cook a meal for you, you call on me. Next one would say, if you ever need someone to come and chop wood, I'll be the one to come chop wood for you. If you ever need me to come watch your kids so you can go run some errands, I'll be the one for that. Go around the circle. Finally, about 10 o'clock, people kind of knew this was coming to an end, begin to head off. Craddock said at the end, just me and the old head elder. Head elder kicked some sand on the fire to put it out. He said, folks, don't get any closer than that. Romans 16. Many of you are part of our Romans 16. We love it here. I have a sermon now on a crusade. I did a crusade in California last week. I preached this last Sabbath morning, this little bit here. Why I still love the church. It's true that I tend to be a half glass full person rather than half empty. That's true. It's my personality. It's what I believe. But I tell people, if you get frustrated, the church can frustrate you. Yes, it can. We all know stories where there's been politics, the church is boring, or there's hypocrites, or their hand is out for money all the time. Oh, yeah, we know. No one has more stories than pastors have. I still love the church after all these years. 48 years I've been a pastor of some kind. And I use Michael Jordan. You don't know how many people I put out in last year about telling Michael Jordan stories. So why don't you tell Kobe Bryant stories? Well, we were here during the Jordan years. And someone even gave me a Bulls tie, so I'm wearing that in his honor today. He came to last year and he handed me this tie. I don't know if he's here today. Baptized him. If you took a video of all the shots that Michael Jordan missed, my first few years here, Michael Jordan and the Bulls did not win. They lost to Detroit every year in the playoffs. And if you just made video of the shots that he missed at the end of the games, the rebounds he missed, the time the other player scored more points, you would say, who is this guy? Get him out. We don't need him. If you left out the 6 world championship banners, it left out the statue out in front. And most people consider him the best. You choose which version of this you want to use. And I just say with you, if you get frustrated by the church sometimes, and yes, there's reasons to be, but don't leave the rest of it out. Don't leave out the Romans 16, these people that are part of your life, that have added everything to us. If you knew how much Hilda and I love this church, people here, and the church before, and the church after, it has given our life so much meaning. Don't forget that part. Whenever there's a disaster around the world, who is it that goes? It's not the atheists. Probably not too many Hindus or Islam or Jews. It's Christians who go. It's a church. Get a boatload of stuff, go down to Haiti, go to Japan, go where typhoons, wherever it is. 2 of our young guys from here went over to Indonesia. As soon as that tsunami hit, Jeff Davies grew up here. He was there on the Today Show. Who starts the clinics around the world? Almost always the church. These people are in Siem Reap in Cambodia, from Australia. I've been in their school, ate dinner with them. After 10 years working for ADRA, he resigned and he just went on independent. They've been independent for 20-some years, praying every day for money to come. That's all they have. They have built a school with 370 kids, mostly AIDS kids. They get the retroviral drugs from the hospital close by, from donations. It's an orphanage, school, church, everything, all by prayer. They have no, how they're going to handle it. I said, how are you going to retire? Trust God. So if you're going to talk about the church, don't forget that part. Don't forget those kind of people. Jay Kessler has a sermon where he talked about churches where you talk about the big things, the important things. My Adventist barber died the other day. I got a chance to speak. I love this man. I went just last week just to say hi to his 2 kids who were there working still. You could go to that place and you would get all the gossip. I could know all about the conference just sitting there in the barber chair. You can go to a barber shop, you go to Cheers and sit in the bar. You can talk to people, what's the sports, what's the weather like, how the Bulls do. But if we want to talk about things that really matter, that are going to last, that have eternal reality, you got to go to a church. That's where we deal with stuff that really matters. Church. These discussions we have. So if I can just say, I think it's pretty clear in the Bible, no one's got to go to heaven by themselves. We're going to go as a church. Romans 16. Now, how many times as a university pastor, people said to me, I'm spiritual, Pastor Dan, but I'm really not religious. What do they mean? They mean you don't need to organize religion. I'm spiritual. I pray. I have relationship. Don't need a church. Oh, well. All they know is what Jesus said. Jesus says, I will build my church. Jesus has a church. If you want to be with Jesus, you have to also have his church. Jesus doesn't give up on the church, even with all the problems. You read Revelation 2 and 3, these are not perfect churches. I have this against you, I have this. But he doesn't give up. He's right there. So in 48 years now, I'm still church. I love church. And I say to people, Hebrews says, don't give up on meeting together, especially as the last day comes closer. We love it when people are watching online. Yeah, we had a virus. But if I can just be really clear with what the Bible says, it doesn't say listen to a sermon every week. It's not what it says. It says meet together. If you can possibly meet together, meet together. Romans 16 together. I've been all over the Philippines and Thailand. As soon as September comes, I'm doing one crusade after another in the Philippines. I got requests for almost every week for 8 months. I get off the plane, these are the people who meet with me. Hilda. We did a crusade in that building. Sergio was there. Savino was there too. No, Sharon. We did it for a while, don't forget. Downtown Manila, in that theater. We went to Vietnam. We came back. We had a few hours free between flights. I said to Hilda, let's just sit here. Let's go see people. People said, we'll meet you at the coffee shop. Just two of us with them were there. Pretty soon there were two more. Pretty soon there was two more. Pretty soon the shop was full of our friends. No one left. No one wanted to go because they knew we might not be together again. Who knew the virus was coming? We have not been back 2.5 years. September we'll go. Romans 16. I couldn't find a picture of us. I found this picture online. When I was here 34 years ago, after a few weeks, we were ushering everyone out. 5 minutes later, everyone in the church was empty. I forget how I decided that, just a young pastor, but I said, let's not do that anymore. Let's just stay here. People talk. Became one of my favorite hours in the world, just to be an hour talk. Young adults would sit over here. Romans 16. We got to go to Iceland this last October. I prayed every day that we would see the northern lights. Finally, one of the last nights, we came out of a place, we were eating at 9 o'clock, and here they were. This is my picture. No one else took that. It's mine. Northern lights. Did you see him? Did you see him? Did you see him too? Here we were. We all got to see it. That's what church is. Church is full of people. C.S. Lewis, the people who you see the same thing. What you believe about God and what you believe about Jesus, we are Christians. We're followers of Jesus together. You too. You too. You see it too. We would never be together, most of us, except for church. We talk about the dream. What does it mean to be a church where everyone's together? Is it possible that we can be a church that doesn't just believe in Jesus, saved by Jesus, loving Jesus, but acts like Jesus? To become a church that is filled with the grace of Jesus, lives and talks like Jesus. Some of you know the name Tony Campolo. In his mid-80s now. Great man. He's preached at Adventist churches many times. We had him at graduation at last year. He tells a story of going down to South Carolina, I think, somewhere in the South. And he went to a church with about 500 people, with black and Spanish and all kinds of mixed people. He said to the young pastor, he said, how did this happen? How did you get so integrated and diverse? He said, did you get this because of the Supreme Court decision? No, we don't know anything about Supreme Court. He said, well, how did this happen? He said, our pastor died. We could not find another pastor who was willing to come. So I said, I would do it. Okay, so I preached a sermon on loving everybody, no matter what, who they were. The deacons came to me and said, don't preach that kind of stuff anymore. That's not right. Don't do that. So I knew they needed it. I preached the same sermon again the next week. He said, I preached that same sermon 4 weeks in a row. The deacon tried to fire me. He said, I told them they hadn't hired me, so they couldn't fire me. I fired those deacons. And I said, I preached that church down to 4 people. But from then on, we only let in the people that who had been touched by Jesus. And they had been raised, that they'd been loved people that they were raised not to love. This is what God had done. Is it possible to have that happen with Jesus? I read a line the other day, and Augustine, the great bishop, he said, everybody has the image of God in you. Every baby. Yes, the image of God has gotten worn down maybe, but it's there. Every being you talk to, you relate to, there's the image of God. They're part of the image of God. Be careful. Be careful. There's God in them. Representative of God. What Jesus says, whatever you did for them, you did for me. Treat them as if they were me. They are me. The people around us, they're ordinary human people, but they're Jesus to us. Famous line from Mother Teresa. She says, I spend an hour every day seeking the face of Jesus. Then I go out into the streets of Calcutta And I looked for the face of Jesus in the poor. We've been to her house there in Calcutta. Amazing. People of Jesus. Famous quote from C.S. Lewis in the sermon Weight of Glory. He said, everybody you know is a potential god or goddess that you would bow down to worship, or it could someday be a demon of hell that you would be freaked out and run away from. He said, every minute that you are helping people either be a god or goddess or to be a demon in hell. Be careful. Be careful what you do with these people. I told this story to pastoral staff, a couple of the elders, and they said, Pastor Dan, tell that to the church. I remember doing it in a wedding here years ago. So anyway, it's called The Rabbi's Gift. I'll tell it really short here. There were 5 monks left in a monastery, and they're all old, way into their 70s. And no one's coming to church anymore, and there's grasses, weeds everywhere, and it's going to die. One day, the old rabbi from the local synagogue in the village was in his cabin in the woods. And they said to the abbot, go to the rabbi. Maybe he'll have some idea for us, how we can bring life back. So he went. 2 old men sitting in this little cabin. Do you have any ideas for us? No, same in our synagogue. No one cares about God and religion and church anymore. 2 old men sitting by the fire. Finally, after a while, it was time to go back, and going to the door, and the monk said, are you sure there's nothing that you can tell us that would help us? And he said, no, except this. The Messiah is one of you. The Messiah is one of us? He got back to the monastery. The old monks gathered around him. What did the old rabbi say? He said, the Messiah is one of you. One of us. They looked at this. He's old, grumpy all the time. It can't be him. Can't be him. But the old parable says that just on the chance that one of them was actually the Messiah, they began to treat each other with extraordinary respect. Might be Jesus. And as that extraordinary respect began to be passed around, life began to come back. There began to be a glow. People began to sense something was different now. They began to come to the ground. They began to have picnic. They cut the grass. They began to open up the church and have services again. And some young men actually came and said, could we join the order with you? Just because we treat each other as if they were the Messiah, like Jesus. And so, my friends, I have a list to give you today. You can take it for whatever it's worth. It's the first time, except for last week, that I've ever tried it out. I've got some of these phrases from people here. What I'm trying to do is to have a little JMV law. You remember the JMV law? Here's some of it, do my honest part, care for my body, keep a level eye, walk softly in the sanctuary. I've been trying to think of little phrases that we can just repeat and quote all the time in all of our life here at this church, wherever I go in the future. Phrases that would guide who we are no matter what. Doesn't matter who this person is, doesn't matter if we agree with them or like them or anything. We would still live by these phrases. Even if you think you're right and they're wrong, it doesn't matter. We'll still live by these things. So I'm trying these out today. Do what you want with them. When I asked for people for suggestions, the first one someone said was, be kind. Did we just start with that? Be kind. What the Bible says, Ephesians 4, be kind. 1 Corinthians 13, I've fallen in love with 1 Corinthians 13. Love is never rude, love always ends, love never ends. Love never keeps record of wrongs. Love is never easily offended. And love is always kind. No exceptions. Doesn't matter if you think you're right and they're wrong. Love is always kind. We had a couple that were going to get married. Two different ethnicities. They were fighting all the time. Oh, the one family wasn't going to come to church. They were so upset that this couple was getting married. We got them in a house. We got them on a table, and we said, okay. So we had prayer. One of the old aunts began to say, oh, you guys need to, you guys, and just lectured. That didn't go anywhere. I began to talk. That didn't go anywhere. The next aunt got the Bible open and read 1 Corinthians 13.